A village is cursed, with their women turning into vampires by the time they turn 18, and only a descendant of an ancient hero can save them. Centuries ago, a remote village was attacked by a group of female vampires who, like other women, led by the ancient vampire queen Carmilla. No one could defeat her except for Baron Wolfgang McLaren, who was away on a crusade. When he returned home, he found that his wife, Ava, had been ensnared by the queen, and she had turned just like her. Because of this, the Baron swore to kill Carmilla and free the village. He then unearthed the sacred books of Necros, where he found that a sword forged with his blood and blessed with Babylonian hexes is the only way to kill the evil queen. After this, he dauntlessly faced Carmilla, but before he could kill her, she placed an evil curse on his bloodline. With this, every woman in the village will be transformed by the curse, turning them into like her upon their 18th birthday. After this, McLaren sliced off Carmilla's head. The villagers can only hope for a prophecy to be fulfilled and that one day, the last descendant of the Baron's bloodline will save them from the curse. In the present, Jimmy gets dumped by his indecisive girlfriend, Judy. She claims that breaking up with him will strengthen the relationship, and although he disagrees, he has no choice. Elsewhere, his best friend, Fletch, gets fired from his clown job after he punched a kid in the face. The two meet at a local diner, updating each other on their latest woes. Jimmy plans to win Judy back, but Fletch thinks that they should just go on a holiday in Ibiza. He starts selling him the fantasy of relaxation, but Jimmy is broke after he lent the money to Judy to buy her car. This upsets Fletch because he's broke too, so they start formulating a cheaper plan. Elsewhere, Judy goes to her new boyfriend's house, only to discover that he's actually married to a woman who looks exactly like her. The door then gets slammed in her face, leaving her speechless. Back at the diner, Jimmy suggests they go hiking, but Fletch thinks it's a stupid idea. Still, Jimmy takes a dart and says that wherever it lands on the map, they'll go there and leave it up to the hands of fate. Being drunk, Fletch just agrees, and the dart lands in the remote village of Cragwich, so they head there later that day. As they start hiking the mountains, Jimmy receives a call from Judy, who's saying that she wants to get back together. However, Fletch is pissed that he's on call with her, so he grabs his phone and steps on it. Jimmy gets pissed, but they continue walking until they reach the village. There, the two get into an argument when Fletch notices that Jimmy's being sassy towards him. He then goes on to complain that they're in the middle of nowhere, and there aren't even any decent women to have fun with. Then, to their surprise, a group of hot women exits from a nearby bar. As they leave in their van, Fletch urges Jimmy to head inside the bar quickly, thinking it's still full of hot women. However, the bar is filled with some grim-looking men instead. Although Jimmy is intimidated by their piercing stares, Fletch tells him to act cool. They then approach the bartender named Tom, and Fletch orders a drink using his ridiculous country accent. To their surprise, Tom says that it's on the house. They hesitatingly receive the drinks, then they get themselves seated, all while receiving stares from everyone. Just then, the vicar barges into the bar and argues with Tom, talking about how the village's women are cursed. As the men continue fighting, the vicar's daughter, Rebecca, exchanges flirty looks with Fletch and Jimmy. Fletch then overhears that Rebecca is turning 18, and although this excites him, this seems to be the root of the vicar's concern. Suddenly, the vicar gets stunned when he spots Jimmy, and he grabs him by the collar while asking for his name. Tom screams at him to stop, so Rebecca pulls him back and leaves with him. Tom then approaches them with a bag of beer, apologizing for the incident. He adds that there's a little cottage down the road where they can rest for the night, and it's free since they offer this to all weary travelers. However, he warns them that the place might be a little tight since he sent a group of women there a while ago. Hearing this, Fletch immediately grabs the bag of beer and leaves. That night, the group of ladies travel to the cottage, but their van suddenly breaks down. Just then, they start hearing weird noises and panic. However, it only turns out to be Fletch and Jimmy. The driver introduces herself as Lottie, while her friends are Anki, Heidi, and Trudy. Fletch, who's a little flustered with the beauties in front of him, gets their names wrong. However, he redeems himself by offering them some beer. This excites Lottie's friends, so Fletch welcomes himself inside the van. While he gets occupied with the others, Jimmy and Lottie get shy in front of each other. Fletch then introduces Jimmy to everyone, adding that he's recently been heartbroken. As they start to get along, the ladies mention that they're headed to the cottage. Fletch plays it out as a coincidence that they're going there too, and with this, they score a free ride. As they leave, a woman's silhouette is revealed to be observing them. Meanwhile, Judy arrives at Cragwitch's local bar, asking if Jimmy has been in the area. Tom tells her that he's seen a couple of young folks not too long ago, and they're headed to the cottage. Elsewhere, the group arrives at the eerie-looking cottage. However, they don't seem to mind this and quickly start partying with drinks and loud music. As the ladies have fun, Jimmy and Fletch can't help but be captivated. Later, Fletch gets occupied with the women while Jimmy and Lottie talk about the portrait of Carmilla, the ancient vampire queen. She shares that she's why they visited Cragwitch, as they're students of folklore and ancient superstition who are on a field trip. Jimmy thinks it's weird that she believes in these things, but Lottie replies that she's actually very superstitious. She adds that the story of what Carmilla did to the town's daughters sparks her interest, and she adds that the mere mention of the queen's name strikes fear even in the bravest men. Just then, Heidi excuses herself to go to the bathroom outside, so Anki accompanies her. Meanwhile, Fletch asks Jimmy which lady he likes, and he replies that it's Lottie. He then starts explaining why, and he describes her in the most genuine ways possible. On the other hand, Fletch says he likes Trudy because she has massive assets and barely speaks. Meanwhile, Trudy realizes that she stinks, so she goes upstairs to shower. Outside, Anki waits for Heidi to finish her business, but she starts to worry when she senses that something is watching her. Something suddenly attacks her, and Heidi hears this. Although scared, she cautiously opens the door, not knowing that Anki, who's now a vampire, is lurking in the dark behind her. Meanwhile, Trudy starts hearing someone calling her name, so she steps out of the shower. When she reaches the window, a spider falls in front of her, causing her to scream. She then calms down but screams again when a vampire attacks her. Lottie, Jimmy, and Fletch hear this from downstairs, so they immediately run to her. Jimmy tries breaking the door, but Lottie seems stronger than him and kicks it open. By the time they get inside, Trudy has already vanished, and all that's left is a towel and a blood-stained window. They suddenly see a vampire floating in the air, but she suddenly disappears. The men start assessing if they should help Lottie, and Fletch is strictly against it. However, Jimmy is determined to help, leaving Fletch with no choice but to come with him. Elsewhere, Judy's car breaks down on her way to the cottage. She tries fixing it, but to no avail. She then tries calling Jimmy, but she can't seem to reach him, which makes her absolutely furious. Just then, it starts to get chilly and someone calls her name. Meanwhile, the trio goes into the woods to look for the women. They're horrified to see Trudy being feasted on by a group of female vampires. Lottie can hardly believe what she's seeing, and she's intrigued that the legend is actually true. Anki suddenly appears behind Fletch, and she starts attacking him. Jimmy jumps in to help, but he gets attacked by Anki instead. Before he gets bit, Lottie stabs Anki in the back, and she shakes and vomits before melting into a pool of white goo. Just then, the group of vampires entices Lottie into joining them, but she refuses. This angers the vampires, so the trio runs back to the cottage. However, they find their path blocked by Heidi, and she forces Lottie to join them. Just then, Fletch smashes her head with a pan, ultimately killing her. They then find refuge in the cottage, and the vampires leave them in the meantime. Jimmy and Fletch start brainstorming on what they should do, and they plan on leaving using the van. However, they realize that it's no longer an option when they hear it being destroyed outside. Suddenly, someone bangs on the door, and it's Judy. She immediately falls into Jimmy's arms, and this discourages Lottie. He brings her to the room upstairs to let her rest, while Lottie asks Fletch who the woman is. He explains that it's Jimmy's on-again, off-again ex. Hearing this, Lottie expresses her disappointment, saying that she thought she had found the right man. However, between Judy and the vampires, she might die inexperienced, which is a piece of information that excites Fletch. Elsewhere, the vicar researches the village's legend. He then arms himself with a wooden stake, then ventures out to find Jimmy. Meanwhile, Judy starts enticing Jimmy, but he soon discovers that she's a vampire. He screams in fear, but Fletch smashes an axe into her head before he gets attacked. However, this doesn't kill Judy right away, and she accidentally knocks Fletch down when he gets hit by the axe's handle. Jimmy then initiates to kill her by plunging the axe deeper into her skull, and she explodes into a white substance. Fletch then wakes up, and Jimmy thanks him for rescuing him. Just then, he takes his pack of rubber, saying that he needs to copulate with Lottie before she dies untouched. Suddenly, Lottie enters the room, and Fletch takes credit for killing Judy, explaining that he suspected she was a vampire. Hearing this lights up Lottie's face, but she looks directly at Jimmy. Fletch rolls his eyes and leaves, realizing that his chances are ruined. Just then, Lottie and Jimmy get closer, but before they can kiss, two vampires appear by the window. They immediately run downstairs, but the vampire's leader, Ava, awaits them by the door. Jimmy realizes that she's not entering the cottage, so Lottie explains that they need to be invited first. Jimmy realizes that they just have to stay put until morning, and he sarcastically says something that implies he's inviting them. However, this actually counts, and the vampires welcome themselves inside. Ava tears his shirt open, and she finds the birthmarks on his chest, allowing her to identify him as McLaren's descendant. Meanwhile, another vampire sniffs Lottie and notices that she's pure. Lottie attempts to attack the vampires, but they restrict her movements and put Jimmy to sleep. Upstairs, Fletch takes a piss when the vicar suddenly bursts into the room with a crucifix. It turns out that Trudy is about to attack him, and he screams at Fletch to push her into the shower. The vicar then blesses the water to make it holy, ultimately killing Trudy. She explodes, and all that's left of her are her silicone implants, which horrifies Fletch. The vicar explains that they've been sent to the cottage as a sacrifice, and the villagers have been doing this for a long time. However, their arrival is fated since Jimmy's birthmark proves that he's from McLaren's bloodline, making him the key to Carmilla's resurrection. He's also the only one who can lift the curse before the vicar's daughter turns 18 in a few hours. Although Fletch refuses to put himself in further danger, the vicar guilt trips him into agreeing, so they head to the Baron's tomb. Meanwhile, Jimmy and Lottie are tied up at Carmilla's crypt, and the vampires are looking forward to ending the McLaren bloodline. Together with Lottie's pure blood, the queen can be resurrected. Elsewhere, Fletch and the vicar retrieve the sword of Dialdo, which McLaren forged centuries ago. When he finds the sword, he bursts into laughter when he discovers that the weapon's handle looks just like its very name. Meanwhile, the vampires leave Jimmy and Lottie until the blood moon arrives. While they're alone, Lottie confesses her love to Jimmy, and it's just unfortunate that they're about to die. Just then, the vampires reappear and they taunt the two. At the tomb, Rebecca approaches Fletch while he's alone and seduces him. However, she suddenly turns into a vampire and he instinctively kills her. He then goes to the vicar's van, keeping quiet about what he just did. On their way to the crypt, Fletch puts his rubbers to use by filling them with holy water. When they arrive, they find that the ritual is already starting. Fletch and the vicar get the vampire's attention, then the latter aims his crossbow at them. However, it jams, so they end up being chased. After running for a while, Fletch gets tired, so he stops and just uses a crucifix to keep the vampires at bay as he rests. When the vicar hurries him to save the world, he props the crucifix on a tree branch, thus blocking the vampires while they return to his friends. They then free Lottie and Jimmy, but Carmilla's resurrection is almost complete. At this point, the sword is their only option, but they realize that they left it in the van. Because of this, the vicar tells the trio to retrieve it while he keeps the vampires off. Seconds after they leave, Carmilla finally rises. The vampires then bask in her glory while Ava reunites with Carmilla and kisses her passionately. Carmilla then sees the vicar and she commands the vampires to kill him. Meanwhile, the trio heads to the gate, but Lottie gets left behind when Ava confronts her. They then fight each other, and although Lottie gains some upper hand, the vampire overpowers her. During this, Jimmy and Fletch are unable to open the gate to get to her, so they try to use the vicar's car, but they don't have the keys. Lottie realizes that she can't beat the vampire in combat, so she pretends to concede and starts kissing her. However, Lottie swiftly uses her necklace to slice off her neck. The vampire's rogue spirit then hits the gate, which explodes open and sends the men flying. Just then, Carmilla holds Lottie hostage, but before she can kill her, Fletch throws one of his rubbers at her. When this fails, he attempts to slay her with the sword. Carmilla easily flicks the sword away and this lands close to Jimmy, who just regained consciousness. As Carmilla chokes Fletch and Lottie, Jimmy gets up with the sword in hand. The evil queen immediately recognizes him, but she barely gets to react when Jimmy darts the blade through her heart. The three then escape while Carmilla screams in pain before exploding. The following morning, the vampires are freed from the curse. However, they're still into each other. Although Fletch is annoyed at this, he gets even more pissed when Fletch and Lottie start kissing. Later that day, they plan to go home, but Lottie says there are more vampires in the world and they're the only ones who can stop them. With this, they agree to free the world of this menace and they become lesbian vampire killers. Unbeknownst to them, a sassy werewolf howls in the distance.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.